I don't give a fuck what nobody think. I'm him.
Damn, I guess they're all just that guy. You could be that guy as well. All you would have to do is subscribe. The choice is yours. Even though I like this show, the thumbnail is just a joke, and this video is meant to bash anyone who dislikes Andor or likes it. Star Wars teaches lessons, entertains people, and gets us away from the troubles of our lives. It gives us something fun to indulge ourselves in. We shouldn't try to ruin it by having a civil war every time a Star Wars show comes out. So, this is my third time trying to make this video. This time it's on my phone. You should also watch the other video that I made on my phone. Pretty good one. If I do say so myself, it's about 2 Star Wars legends who are retiring. The link will be in the description. Okay, so I'm sorry this is late. It was too big to be saved. It was like 10 gigabytes on my crappy tablet that I was using to make it at the time. The second view was kind of like the Library of Alexandria. We'll never know how much it would have affected the world if it was able to be saved. But yeah, jokes aside, it was very relieving to finally be getting to do this video. And I'm sorry that it came so late. First, I would like to address the misinformation and misquoting that has been going around about Tony Gilroy. It's fine if you don't like him, but he never said that he didn't like Star Wars or that he hated Star Wars, or that he never watched it or anything like that. He said, and I quote, "I'm not a fan." By that, I think he meant that he was just a casual fan and that he doesn't keep up to date with the shows and lore too much. If you don't like him, that's fine, but don't spread misinformation about the guy. Chances are he's probably more into Star Wars after he finished Andor and saw how many people loved it. Now on to the actual show review. The results of this show are like if you gave Tony Gilroy a pile of yellow sand, which I mean, hey, it's yellow, so that's something neat, and then he made it into a beautiful castle. What I kind of mean by this is that it's pretty widely regarded as a good show. His main character is a guy nobody was really ever that interested in, and a bunch of new characters and no legacy characters. Well, Mon Mothma doesn't really count as a legacy character because, well, she had like 3 lines in the original trilogy and they were about a sentence long each. When the show was announced, I literally thought it was a waste of time. I thought it was a waste of money, if I'm being honest. It had no right being as good as it was. And it made these characters interesting, and it wasn't handed great characters. Tony and his crew made them. All from a mediocre character who wasn't force sensitive or a great warrior or great pilot or anything crazy like that. Now, some people said it wasn't worth watching because we knew he would die, which honestly is really ignorant. In the prequels, we knew what would happen to Anakin and that Obi-Wan and Yoda and Palpatine would eventually die, and we kind of knew like what happened to them, the general gist of it at least. And we knew that the Jedi would be hunted down, but literally everyone watched them. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's very ignorant to say we shouldn't. It's a waste of time to watch something because you know the ending. You don't watch a story just for the ending. You watch it to be entertained, to see the story. I mean, yes, the ending's a part of it, but not the whole thing. Okay, first things first. Let's discuss the visual aspect of the show. Visually, the show is just amazing. I usually don't like shows that are in cloudy, muddy places. But the town on Ferrix is very visually very nice, especially for what it is. I thought it was gonna have like the same look of England, but in this show, the lighting in so many of the different scenes was just perfect, and not just dark and mucky, which is very weird considering that I usually prefer bright and vibrant settings. As you can probably tell from my thumbnails, Aldani, the base, their camp, all look great, which once again is odd because it's just a normal wooded mountain area. Like, it shouldn't be that special. The meteor shower during the heist on Aldani was one of the most beautiful scenes in all of Star Wars. No doubt. I don't even think I need to explain that too much. It was just beautiful. I was once again wrong because the Imperial's facilities I thought would be bland because the original trilogy, they aren't really anything to gasp at, but they changed it up with the ISB. The black and white of the walls and the corridors of the facility were amazing. All the scenes on Coruscant with Luthen's shop, Mon Mothma's penthouse were amazing. All the artifacts and jewelry and decorations of different places were just spectacular. The prison also looked pretty good for the same reason as the ISB facility. And the different settings and the contrasts of the atmospheres of the planets were amazing. But to wrap this up, it was another good example of what I said about making sand into a castle. Okay, so now on to the story. The first two episodes were honestly incredibly slow and boring. I think of Snapchat as probably the second dumbest social media app, and I was going on during these episodes. But they set up later episodes perfectly, which I just couldn't see while I was watching them. Part of it might be because I was watching Game of Thrones at the time, so I was comparing it to an all-time great show in its earlier episodes, and it was around the time when schoolwork actually gets tough, and so I was pretty tired while watching it. It wasn't the best mood. I think when people say the show is filler, that they are really overlooking what these episodes, or episodes like these, do for the story. In each episode that's called filler, we learn more about each character, and they develop further on. If we just had action sequences or big events, you wouldn't really learn as much about the characters. And if they do have development, it won't be very meaningful and would just be sudden and undeserved. A good example is that if we didn't see how horrible and miserable the prisoners' lives were inside of the prison, then the prison break scene would just pretty much mean nothing. Or Andor leaving barracks. If we didn't see what his life was like, we wouldn't understand the meaning of him leaving and why he acted the way he did. To get rewarding moments, you need build-up. Now, on to the Aldani arc. Nemik is one of my favorite characters in the show. Him and Vel are the two best characters, not including Cassian, who are present during the Aldani mission. Vel and Nemik show emotions at times when other extreme rebels probably wouldn't. Nemik is very insightful, and he's also very thoughtful. It's kind of funny how this dude's name is Cereal, and he's always eating cereal. Man, Cereal Pharrell, he's an interesting character. He really is roughing it out this whole arc, and the type of villain you feel bad for. Mon Mothma was the last character in the original trilogy that I expected to see in the show. We see her home life and learn more about her, and it was surprisingly interesting to see. I gotta say though, her husband is just such a dick, bro. He's probably the most annoying character in the show. Or, no, he definitely is. Her parents really screwed her over making her marry that. I must say, I am curious as to why they didn't use the same actress from the prequels or Rogue One for this. If anyone knows, please tell me. But the actress was amazing nonetheless. It was great seeing Mon Mothma operate and manage parts of the rebellion from the shadows, and her working with Luthen really showed the contrast of ideals and morals of people within the rebellion. I never really thought of that funding the rebellion could turn out to be that much of a problem, but it really goes to show how oppressed people were by the Empire. They controlled everything and monitored everything as well. She was truthfully a D tier character for me. Now I'd say a lower B tier character, which is very impressive because she's not a force user or anything like that. Around this time, you start to see Luthen's true colors and how cold he really is. Cassian also kills the guy who was just about to rob the rest of the people on the mission of their cut, showing again some people in the rebellion have no commitment and are in it for glory or money. Dedra is a very cool character. She's like an evil underdog. I'm not exactly sure why, but she seemed to be thought less of by some of the other ISP officers. I think it was because she was the only woman there, but I'm not entirely sure. But it seems to be what the show was implying. It was great seeing her climb up the ranks of the ISB, and it makes me wonder, how far can you go? When would you stop being rewarded for your success? Because eventually you'll be someone the Emperor is working with, but he usually only works with those he trusts in some way. Also, it's very interesting, and the actress had great insight when she said this, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, even though she's an underdog and is bullied by others outranking her, she is still fascist. She is still evil, but in this situation, a hero would usually find themselves in a traditional story, at least. I mean, that's very loose because I can't remember exactly what she said, but that's kind of the general gist of it. Now, on to the prison arc. I think it was cool that they were building pieces of the Death Star, but kind of odd they weren't building anything else. I'd imagine Palpatine would cover his tracks a little bit better. Kino Loy was a very popular character, maybe the most popular character in the show. Honestly, he was a great character, but I'm taking Andor or Luthen over him all day. And there's others I'd probably consider making an argument for. Still, a great character. A great thing about this arc is its representation of the brutality of the Empire, and it really cements them as the big bads, and shows how imposing they really are. An example from this, while it's not from this arc, is how scared the characters on the Aldani mission were by a TIE fighter flying overhead. I love the original trilogy, best trilogy, but we see Han roasting 3PO, flirting with Leia, eating a snack, and still easily shooting down like 3 TIE fighters. This show gives us a realistic perspective of how imposing a TIE fighter would really be if you were to come across one, and it showed it in just a single scene. Even the troopers seem more menacing than in in Rebels or the original trilogy, which is something Disney's actually been pretty good with, in my opinion at least. The treatment of the prisoners makes it so much more rewarding when they are released in the end of the arc. It's one of the most exciting scenes in any live action Star Wars show for me. Another thing, Bix being forced to listen to the screams of children being murdered isn't as violent as Anakin's injuries on Mustafar, but it's just so much darker. It's not even close. And it once again shows how many Imperials have no limits in what they're willing to do for the Empire. Andor and Kino were great in this arc, and it was awesome seeing Kino's slow revelation that they weren't going to get out, and the madness in his eyes, and Andor being the catalyst to that realization. Andor and his buddy escaping and getting pranked by these fat, scaly gophers, which was really confusing and weird. I don't really know what to say about that, honestly. It was sad seeing Andor being heartbroken about his mother's death. She was really like one of the only people he had, if not the only person. Mon Mothma having no choice but to make her daughter have an arranged marriage, even though her daughter is up for it, was another very emotional scene. She didn't want her daughter to end up like her in a miserable marriage, and her ending up doing it is a nice parallel to Luthen doing what needs to be done for the rebellion. She learned from him, which was nice to see. Luthen is borderline evil. In the scene with the ISB spy, he's just cold as fuck. He was a Sigma. He's like a Jedi, like a Sith. He in a weird collaboration of ideologies. He had no emotion, just goals that he would do anything to achieve. If he was in his prime in the rebellion, it would be GG's for Palpatine. One-on-one, it's GG's. Like, it don't matter. He would stand no chance against Prime Luthen. Luthen is like 90% of the rebellion strength. Him getting away from the Star Destroyer is a highlight of the show. He's just so goddamn badass. He is just a menace. He's like, what if Palpatine was a rebel? Good resources, changes his personality on a dime, and cares for almost no one. Except maybe his assistant, who I thought was his girlfriend at first. The classic duo of rich old dude and beautiful young woman. But I think it's gotta be his daughter or something like that, based off of like how they interact with each other. Marva's speech eventually touched Luthen, which is the opposite of Mon. They're both learning to be more like each other, which is really interesting to see. Okay, Serial is on absolute demon time. He's sipping hard for Dedra. She literally threatens to kill him, and he replies by telling her he needs her. Which is, it's so weird because he acts very beta, but is a great fighter, smart guy, pretty good looking, but just acts beta, which is just odd. He's really a wild card. I mean, it's just weird to see like what he believes. He just follows like rules though. The setup during episode 11 for episode 12 was perfect. The 12th episode was the peak of the show. Only thing you can really dislike is no legacy characters or big cameos besides the Death Star, which was really cool to see. I thought we would see Palpatine address the Senates because, well, of all the crazy stuff that was going on. But and the rebellion was really making like big moves here. But it makes sense that he hasn't yet, and I'm perfectly fine with it. But it would have been really cool to see him. But it really makes me wonder, what the hell was Palpatine doing? Like, the Empire's getting shit on and made a joke of, and he doesn't make a single public appearance. Is my man, like, in a club smoking death sticks or something? Like, even if it's in a book, we need a canon explanation for what Palpatine is doing in his free time. Old canon, he just mainly read books, or I guess legends. So yeah, he just read books and write on his private world. So I'm just gonna assume it's something like that, because the man interacts with like 2 Imperial officers, and even those 2 Imperial officers barely ever see him in person, or like in general. Anyways, awesome episode. Andor returning to Ferrix in an emotional but secret homecoming while being hunted down by the Empire and rebels was just so epic and had me on the edge of my seat the whole time. The speech in the beginning from Nemec was awesome and perfectly put into words the struggle against the Empire. Marva's speech was also amazing, and both speeches were very emotional and extremely exciting and enthralling. Then the whole planet actively rebelled against the Empire. It was absolute chaos like we've never seen before in Star Wars, and it was awesome. The support Andor finally gets after his journey of more or less being alone in his true goals was so satisfying, and the tension of the search for him added even more to it. Ferrix was a volcano waiting to explode. Also, Dedra walking around like a badass, waiting for a moment to catch Andor was just amazing. And Luthen and company lurking around the city, hunting him down was just perfect. Andor helping Bix was heartbreaking after all the torturing she went through. She was finally safe. Even Luthen, the man without a soul, was touched by Mara's speech. I thought in the back of my mind she might have faked her death, but didn't really believe it. I somewhat thought Dedra died in the explosion, but obviously she didn't. But she was kind of screwed because she was not too good with a blaster, and a bunch of angry people were attacking her, and she wasn't no Darth Maul in hand-to-hand combat either. Then Serial clutched up and saved her. It was just like when LeBron won his first ring after years of doubt from many people. He did it finally. And they definitely either make out or maybe more, start a relationship soon after that ending of the scene. Cassian facing off against Luthen at the end was awesome. Nothing else can explain that better. Overall, the show was near perfect. This episode brought it up from a 9 to a 10 probably. Maybe a 9.75 because it did kind of lead you to believe Pops was gonna get a scene. For what this show is, it's perfect. There's nothing else I can say. It isn't Revenge of the Sith, obviously, but for a show about the rebellion on a minor character, it couldn't have been better. I'd easily choose this over Tales of the Jedi. I don't really see the reasons for the debate, but to each their own, of course. I'd choose it over Boba without too much thought. I'd choose it over Mando Season 1, and I'd have it over Mando Season 2, just barely though. And I have it under Kenobi just a little bit. But please tell me your thoughts on Andor in the comments down below. I'd love to hear all of your opinions, and explain why, and who are your favorite characters, and what would you like to see in a season 2. But anyways, please make a comment, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.